I rise today to bring attention to our ongoing battle against human trafficking in the state of Illinois and across the entire nation. Unlike many of the issues that come before this body, the issue of human trafficking does not divide us along partisan or geographic lines. It knows no barriers whatsoever. A startling figure is that 300,000 children under the age of 18 were forced into trafficking this year in the United States. I repeat that figure, 300,000 young children. Our fight against this threat took a major step forward in 2016. I introduced and sponsored legislation with colleagues on both sides of this aisle and in the Senate that created the Human Trafficking Task Force. Our goals were, number one, help policymakers and law enforcement more effectively target and combat forced sexual exploitation in the state of Illinois. Two was to raise public awareness on the challenges associated with treating human trafficking victims. And three was to prevent future cases of sexual exploitation. The average age of American minors into the sex trade is 12 to 14 years old. I repeat that, 12 to 14 years old. I wish to call attention to one tragic example of the devastating toll human trafficking takes on the lives of families here in Illinois, as reported in the April 3rd edition of the Chicago Tribune. 16-year-old Desiree Robinson was found beaten, strangled, and her throat slit in a parking garage in South Suburban Markham on Christmas Eve, 2016, while a pimp whose prosecutors contend trafficked her for a month before her death waited outside that garage in a nearby car. While others in her neighborhood were celebrating the joys of Christmas, she lay dead in that garage. The records obtained by the FBI showed that Desiree wanted to escape the life of sexual exploitation she had become subject to. In a private Facebook message sent to a friend on December 15th, Desiree said, "I'm in a situation where I'm being pimped." 9 days later, she was killed. The man who originally brought young Desiree to that garage several weeks earlier had expected to be paid a $250 finder's fee, illustrating the grisly financial incentive cultivated among sex traffickers who profit from the exploitation of victims, mainly underage girls and young women, even though boys are still included. That man pleaded guilty in federal court earlier this month to one count of sex trafficking conspiracy for recruiting Desiree into a life led to her murder. Desiree's story is just one tragic example of how many that have taken place right here in Illinois and across this country. This story, along with others, we as the task force took into testimony from members throughout the state of Illinois, and we had shock and tears in our faces when hearing the testimony that was given. One was a grown woman who was trafficked by her father since she was 9 years old. This is in the state of Illinois. A woman whose boyfriend got her hooked in a suburban area on heroin and then continued to traffic her to keep up his profits. We heard many shocking stories, and these are some of the facts that are disturbing as well as they are startling. Human trafficking now has surpassed the illegal sale of firearms. Human trafficking is on pace to surpass the illegal sale of drugs within the next few years. This is a $32 billion a year industry, and it is on the rise in all 50 states in the United States, with Illinois being considered a national center due to our geographic location and being a hub of transportation. 4.5 million of trafficked persons are sexually exploited. Up to 300,000 Americans, as I said before, under the age of 18 are lured into the commercial sex trade every year. The largest group of at-risk children are runaway, thrown away, or homeless American children who use survival sex to acquire food, shelter, clothing, and other things that they need to survive on America's streets. According to the National Runaway Switchboard, 1.3 million runaway and homeless youth live on America's streets every day. 5,000 of these children, runaways, die each year. I repeat that. 5,000 of those children die each year. It would not be surprising to learn that the number of children trafficked in the United States is actually much higher than those numbers I just quoted, the 300,000 number. The National Human Trafficking Hotline reports that there were 198 cases reported to the hotline in Illinois in 2016. This is a 64% increase over 2015, although really very few cases are actually reported to these hotlines and really are not indicative of the crisis in our state. Back in 2005, the FBI designated Chicago as one of the 13 highest locations and of high intensity for child prostitution. We here have a responsibility and a great opportunity to reverse this dangerous and tragic reality. We are making strides to combat human trafficking in Illinois and protect future victims from falling prey. Our Human Trafficking Task Force conducted hearings across the state of Illinois, from Chicago to the College of DuPage to Champaign to Springfield and all around this state. We have been given an opportunity to listen to the testimony of the victims who have been carried on by traffickers around this entire state. We engage service providers and law enforcement agencies as well to collaborate on ideas to effectively combat the forced sexual exploitation of women and children. We have a law committee within our task force, of which House Bill 2063 came out of, and this bill is what gives victims civil action against their traffickers in the court. We have had several other pieces of legislation introduced by the members of our task force also during this legislative period. This issue has never been more timely or more important. Other members of the task force are very engaged in carrying on even after we give our report. Our report is required to be submitted with its findings and recommendations to the General Assembly on or before June 30th. I would like to thank the students of SIU who are compiling the data for that report to submit. We look forward to completing our work this spring and moving forward together as a body to prevent future victims from falling prey to sexual exploitation, while at the same time strengthening our law enforcement agencies as they pursue justice for those who have already been victimized by human trafficking and providing adequate support services to those victims. There are several areas just in the city of Chicago where there are vans that go up and down the streets at night giving subsidies of toiletries, anything that women need, and then offering them the chance to come in and get protection. The fact is that human trafficking is happening right here and right now in Illinois, and a person's life, liberty, and fortune can be under the absolute control of another and be sold, bought, or used at the will of that owner. 12.3 million people in the world are trafficked in labor or sex. This is not only a state crisis, not only a national crisis, but it is a worldwide crisis, and we are starting here by trying to address that in our capital. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.